Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the center of the massive circular chamber, her small human form dwarfed by the towering alien representatives that surrounded her. The Galactic Council chamber was designed to intimidate, and it succeeded brilliantly. Crystalline beings that sparkled like living diamonds sat next to slug-like creatures whose tentacles dripped with bioluminescent slime. Insectoid delegates clicked their mandibles in what she assumed was either greeting or threat assessment. The High Chancellor, a being that looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a cathedral spire, raised one of its four arms to silence the chamber. Its voice resonated through translation devices embedded in the walls, creating an eerie harmony of sounds that made Sarah's teeth ache. "We have called this emergency session to address the human problem," the Chancellor announced. "For too long, we have allowed these newcomers to spread unchecked through our galaxy. Their expansion must be stopped." Sarah stepped forward, her diplomatic training keeping her voice steady despite the hostile atmosphere. "Honored Chancellor, members of the Council, humanity comes before you in peace. We seek only to find our place among the stars, to trade, to learn, to contribute to the galactic community." A ripple of what could only be described as laughter swept through the chamber, though it sounded more like breaking glass mixed with the screech of metal on metal. The delegate from the Zephyrian Empire, a massive creature that resembled a walking mountain of coral and bone, spoke next. "Contribute, you primitive mammals have nothing to offer us. Your technology is crude, your lifespan laughably short, your culture barbaric. You wage war among yourselves even as you beg for acceptance from your betters." The Chancellor's compound eyes focused on Sarah with predatory intensity. "The Zephyrian speaks truth. In the mere 50 years since your kind discovered faster-than-light travel, you have established colonies on 17 worlds. You multiply like a plague, consuming resources that could be better utilized by more worthy species." Sarah felt her diplomatic composure beginning to crack, but she maintained her professional demeanor. "We have followed all established protocols for colony establishment. Every world we've settled was either uninhabited or we received proper authorization through the Colonial Administration Board. We've paid all required fees and taxes to the Council." "Fees," spat the delegate from the Nexari Collective, a being that appeared to be made entirely of shifting, geometric patterns. "As if money could buy the right to pollute our galaxy with your presence. Do you know what we call species like yours in the old tongue? Krathari. It means the consuming swarm." The word hit Sarah like a physical blow. She had learned enough galactic history to know that term. It was what the Council used to classify species marked for extermination. The Chancellor continued, its voice taking on an official tone that chilled Sarah to the bone. "The Council has reached a unanimous decision. Humanity has 30 standard days to withdraw from all colonies and return to your origin system. Any human presence beyond the Sol system after this deadline will be considered an act of aggression and will be met with appropriate force." "That's impossible," Sarah protested, her diplomatic training finally cracking. "We have 67 million people living on those colonies. Some have been there for decades. They've built lives, communities, entire civilizations. You can't just order them to abandon everything." "We can, and we have," the Chancellor replied with what Sarah was beginning to recognize as smugness. "The alternative is total annihilation. We suggest you begin preparations immediately." The delegate from the Corvan hierarchy, a reptilian species known for their military prowess, leaned forward. "Perhaps the humans do not understand the gravity of their situation. Allow me to clarify. The Council commands a combined fleet of over 50,000 warships. Your entire species possesses fewer than 300 vessels that could generously be called military craft. We have weapons that can crack planets. You have barely progressed beyond chemical explosives and primitive energy weapons. This is not a negotiation, human. This is notice of eviction." Sarah looked around the chamber, searching for any sign of sympathy or reason among the alien faces. She found none. These beings had already made their decision, probably long before this meeting had ever been called. This entire session was theater, a way for them to feel righteous about what they were planning to do. "And if we refuse?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. The Chancellor's mandibles spread wide in what might have been a smile on a creature designed for smiling. "Then you will join the Valdari, the Kemet, and the 17 other species that once thought themselves worthy of challenging Council authority. Perhaps archaeologists from more worthy races will puzzle over your ruins someday, and wonder how such a primitive species ever thought it could survive among the stars. The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of the translation devices. Sarah realized that this moment would be remembered by history, assuming there was anyone left to remember it. She thought of her daughter back on Earth, of the colonists on New Geneva and Kepler Prime who were going about their daily lives, unaware that their entire civilization had just been sentenced to death. She straightened her shoulders and looked directly at the Chancellor. "I will deliver your ultimatum to my government, but I want you to know something, all of you. You think you understand humanity because you've observed us for a few decades. You see our conflicts and our chaos, and you mistake that for weakness. You're making a mistake." The Nexari delegates' patterns shifted into what Sarah had learned indicated amusement. "What possible threat could your species pose to us, human? Your entire civilization is barely a footnote in galactic history." "Maybe," Sarah conceded, "but footnotes have a way of becoming very important when you're trying to understand how everything went wrong." She turned and walked toward the chamber exit, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. Behind her, she could hear the aliens resuming their discussions, probably already planning the division of human colonial assets among themselves. As the massive doors sealed shut behind her, Sarah allowed herself one moment of despair. Then she straightened her spine and headed for the communication center. She had a very difficult message to transmit to Earth. 3 hours later, she sat in her small diplomatic quarters aboard the human embassy ship Endeavour, staring at the response from the United Earth Council. It was shorter than she had expected, only 3 lines. "Message received and understood. Begin immediate evacuation of all non-essential diplomatic personnel. Operation Lazarus is now active." Sarah had never heard of Operation Lazarus, but something about those words sent a chill down her spine. She had always wondered why Earth had seemed so calm about sending tiny groups of humans out into a galaxy full of hostile aliens. Now she suspected she was about to find out. She looked out her viewport at the massive council station that housed the galactic government. Thousands of ships from hundreds of species docked at its countless bays. It was a monument to alien cooperation and power, a structure that had stood for over 10,000 years as the center of galactic civilization. For some reason, Sarah found herself wondering how long it would take to rebuild something like that after it was gone. She pushed the thought away as unworthy of a diplomat, but it lingered in the back of her mind as she began preparing for the journey home. The Galactic Council had just made what they believed was a routine decision to eliminate an annoying pest. They had no way of knowing that they had actually just declared war on the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever seen. But they were about to learn. Humanity had spent 50 years among the stars being very careful to appear harmless and primitive. That performance was about to end, and the final act was going to be spectacular. Sarah began composing her personal log, documenting everything she had witnessed. Historians would want to know exactly how the greatest galactic power in known history had managed to destroy itself in a single afternoon. She intended to give them a very complete record. Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the Council's invasion fleet approach New Geneva through the tactical display. 200 alien warships, each one larger than anything in the official human fleet, moved through space with the confidence of predators approaching helpless prey. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Council Fleet Commander," reported Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. "Put it through." The main screen shimmered and resolved into the image of a Corvan hierarchy commander, its reptilian features arranged in what Webb had learned to recognize as contempt. The alien's scarred hide and ceremonial battle armor marked it as a veteran of dozens of planetary conquests. "Human Commander, I am Admiral Thexkai of the Corvan Third Fleet. By order of the Galactic Council, you will stand down immediately and prepare for planetary evacuation. You have 6 hours to begin loading your colonists onto transport vessels. Any attempt at resistance will result in immediate orbital bombardment." Webb nodded calmly. "I understand your position, Admiral. However, I'm afraid we won't be evacuating. New Geneva is a human colony, and we intend to defend it." The Corvan's throat sac inflated with what Webb knew was aggressive posturing. "Do not test our patience, human. We have 200 ships. According to our intelligence, you have perhaps a dozen obsolete vessels in this system. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." "I appreciate the offer," Webb replied with a slight smile, but we'll have to decline. In fact, I have a counter-proposal. You have 1 hour to withdraw from this system. After that, any ship that remains will be considered hostile and will be destroyed. For a moment, the alien admiral stared at the screen in what could only be described as shock. Then its mandibles began clicking rapidly in what Webb recognized as Corvan laughter. You cannot be serious. Are all humans insane, or are you somehow special in your delusions? I guess you'll find out in 59 minutes and 30 seconds, Webb replied, then cut the transmission. Around the bridge, his crew worked with calm efficiency. These weren't the nervous movements of people facing impossible odds. These were the precise actions of professionals who had trained for exactly this moment for their entire careers. Tactical, what's our status? Webb asked. Commander Sarah Kim looked up from her console. All stealth platforms are in position. Orbital defense grids are fully charged. Deep space sentries have confirmed no additional enemy forces within 3 light-years. Engineering. Reactor output at 100%. All weapons systems nominal. The surprise packages are ready for deployment on your order, sir. Webb nodded and settled into his command chair. For 50 years, humanity had been very careful to appear weak and primitive to the galactic community. Every human ship that operated in Council space was deliberately outdated, every weapon system carefully designed to appear inferior to alien technology. It had been a masterful deception, one that was about to pay dividends. The truth was that humanity had never stopped preparing for war. While the Council saw primitive chemical rockets and basic energy weapons, human scientists had been developing technologies that would have terrified the aliens if they had known to look for them. But the Council suffered from the same arrogance that had destroyed a dozen other galactic powers throughout history. They assumed that their superiority was permanent and unquestionable. Sir, the Council fleet is moving into attack formation, Torres reported. Let them come. All stations prepare for Operation Thunder. On the tactical display, Webb watched the enemy fleet spread out in a classic Corvan battle formation. It was textbook perfect for dealing with a conventional enemy. Unfortunately for Admiral Thexkai, humans had never been particularly conventional. The first sign that something was wrong came when the Council's lead destroyer simply vanished from their sensors. One moment it was there, a massive wedge of metal and energy pushing through space. The next moment, there was nothing but a rapidly expanding cloud of superheated plasma. Admiral Thexkai's roar of rage echoed across the communication channels. What happened to the Razor Wind? Report. Before anyone could answer, 3 more ships disappeared in brilliant flashes of light. Then 5 more. The Corvan Admiral was staring at his tactical display in growing horror as his fleet began dying around him. Mines, someone screamed over the comm. They've mined the entire approach vector. But these weren't ordinary mines. Humanity had developed something the galaxy had never seen before. Stealth weapons platforms that could remain undetected for months, powered by quantum batteries and covered in metamaterial that bent sensor waves around them. Each platform carried enough antimatter to crack a planet's crust, but they were using just enough to vaporize ships. All vessels, emergency scatter pattern, Thexkai commanded. Find those platforms and destroy them. The Council fleet began to spread out, firing wildly at empty space, hopping to hit the invisible weapons that were killing them. It was exactly what Webb had been hopping for. Now, he said quietly, the human ships that had been hiding behind New Geneva's moon suddenly appeared, their stealth systems shutting down to reveal vessels that looked nothing like the primitive craft the Council had expected. These ships were sleek, angular, and bristling with weapons that shouldn't have existed. The UES Defiance itself was a masterpiece of human engineering disguised as an obsolete cruiser. Beneath its deliberately crude-looking hull lay armor made from collapsed matter, energy shields that could absorb the output of a star, and weapons that fired streams of accelerated exotic matter at near-light speeds. Webb's fleet opened fire. The beams that lanced out from the human ships didn't behave like any energy weapons the Council had ever encountered. Instead of dissipating over distance, they seemed to grow stronger, carving through enemy shields like they weren't there, and boring neat holes through hulls that had been designed to withstand anything the galaxy could throw at them. Admiral Thexkai watched in growing panic as his fleet died around him. In less than 10 minutes, He had lost over 60 ships to weapons that shouldn't have been possible. His remaining vessels were firing everything they had at the human fleet, but their weapons were having almost no effect. How, he whispered into his comm, how is this possible? Webb's face appeared on his screen again, no longer showing any trace of diplomatic courtesy. You want to know how? Simple. While you've been ruling the galaxy for 10,000 years, getting fat and lazy and arrogant, we've been preparing for this day. Every human scientist, every engineer, every military planner has been working toward one goal, making sure that when someone tried to destroy us, we would be ready. The Corvan Admiral's throat sac was now deflating in fear. This is impossible. Our intelligence reports showed your technology was centuries behind ours. Your intelligence saw exactly what we wanted it to see. Did you really think we would show you our real capabilities while you held all the power? We let you think we were primitive because it was safer that way. But now you've forced our hand. Another wave of exotic matter beams reached out from the human fleet, and 20 more council ships vanished in bright flashes. Webb continued speaking as if discussing the weather. Every human colony has been preparing for this day. Every seemingly helpless settlement has enough hidden firepower to sterilize a continent. Every human ship in your space has been gathering intelligence and mapping your defenses for 50 years. You thought you were dealing with a primitive species. You were actually dealing with a civilization that has spent half a century preparing for total war. The tactical display showed that fewer than 40 ships remained of the mighty Corvan Third Fleet. They were trying to retreat now, but the hidden mine platforms were activating all around them, creating a wall of destruction that trapped them in the system. Please, Admiral Thexkai said, his voice hoarse with desperation. We surrender, call off your weapons, we yield. Webb's expression didn't change. You came here to exterminate my people. You were going to bombard our cities from orbit and hunt down every human survivor. Did you think we would show you the mercy you were planning to show us? The last of the enemy ships died in a brilliant flash of light. Admiral Thexkai's flagship held out for almost 30 seconds against the concentrated fire of the human fleet before its hull integrity failed, and it joined its companions in destruction. Webb sat back in his command chair and looked around at his crew. They had just destroyed one of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy without losing a single ship. It was a victory that would have been unthinkable just hours before. Communications send a message to Earth. Tell them the first phase was successful. Then contact all colony worlds. It's time to take the gloves off. Across human space, similar scenes were playing out. Council fleets that had expected easy conquests were being systematically destroyed by weapons and tactics they had never imagined. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength had never been their technology or their ships. It was their ability to plan for the unthinkable and their willingness to do whatever it took to survive. The war that the Council thought would be over in days was about to become their worst nightmare, and it was just beginning. High Chancellor Vexthala stood in the Council's war room, staring at reports that made no sense. In the past 48 hours, 7 major Council fleets had been completely destroyed. Not defeated, not forced to retreat, but utterly annihilated with no survivors and minimal human losses. This cannot be accurate, the Chancellor said, its 4 arms gesturing in agitation. How does a primitive species destroy the Corvan Third Fleet, the Nexari Battle Group 7, and the entire Zephyrian Home Defense Force? General Krathmer of the Taurian Empire, a massive being that resembled an armored bear crossed with a tank, stepped forward. The reports are confirmed, Your Excellency. We have sensor logs from automated monitoring stations throughout the affected systems. The humans have technology we've never seen before. Weapons that ignore shields, ships that appear invisible to our sensors, and defensive systems that can withstand direct bombardment from our heaviest cruisers. The Chancellor's compound eyes focused on the tactical display showing the location of every known human colony. Red X marks indicated where Council fleets had been destroyed. The pattern was emerging, and it was terrifying. They were ready for us, whispered the delegate from the Altarian Confederacy, a crystalline being whose normally bright luminescence had dimmed to almost nothing. 50 years they've been among us, and they were preparing for this the entire time. Ambassador Veltash of the Andromedans raised one of its tentacles nervously. How is this possible? We monitored their technological development. We observed their industrial capacity. Nothing we saw indicated they possessed this level of capability. General Krathmer pulled up a new display showing captured video from the battle at New Geneva. The assembled council members watched in silence as human ships that looked like primitive metal boxes suddenly revealed themselves to be technological marvels that cut through the pride of the Corvan fleet like it was made of paper. "They fooled us," the general admitted. "Every human ship operating in council space was deliberately primitive. Every weapon they showed us was deliberately obsolete. Every technology demonstration was carefully designed to make us underestimate them. While we thought we were watching a backward species stumble around the galaxy, we were actually observing one of the most sophisticated intelligence operations in galactic history." The silence in the room was broken by the soft chiming of an emergency communication. A hologram materialized in the center of the chamber, showing the image of Admiral Marcus Webb. His uniform was crisp, his expression calm, and his eyes held the cold confidence of someone who held all the winning cards. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Webb said, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "I bring greetings from the United Earth Military Command and a message from the government of humanity." Chancellor Vexthala stepped forward, trying to project authority despite the fear that was rapidly consuming the room. "Human Admiral, you will cease your illegal attacks immediately. The Council demands." "The Council demands nothing," Webb interrupted, his tone remaining perfectly polite. "The Council no longer has the power to make demands. You declared war on humanity, and now you're discovering what that actually means." The display behind Webb changed to show a strategic map of the galaxy. Red dots marked the locations of major Council worlds and installations. Green arrows showed human fleet movements. The pattern was clear and terrifying. "As of this moment, human forces are moving against every major Council world. Your fleets are being systematically destroyed. Your orbital installations are being captured or eliminated. Your communication networks are being disrupted by viruses that our people embedded in your systems decades ago." General Krathmer leaned forward aggressively. "You cannot hold the galaxy, human. Even with your technological advantages, you are too few. We have trillions of citizens across thousands of worlds." Webb smiled, and something about that expression made every being in the room take a step back. "General, you still don't understand what you're facing. We don't need to hold the galaxy. We just need to break the systems that allow you to control it." The display changed again, showing the massive Council communication array that connected every member world. As they watched, human ships appeared around the installation and began systematically destroying it with surgical precision. "Your government depends on instant communication across interstellar distances," Webb continued. "Without that array, it takes weeks for messages to travel between member worlds. Your fleets can't coordinate. Your administrators can't govern. Your economy can't function." Another display showed human forces hitting critical infrastructure throughout Council space. Shipyards, orbital factories, military academies, the vast bureaucratic centers that kept the galactic government functioning. All of them were burning. The Nexari delegates' patterns were shifting rapidly in what Webb recognized as panic. "This is madness. You're destroying the foundation of galactic civilization." "No," Webb replied calmly. "We're destroying your control over galactic civilization. There's a difference." Chancellor Vexthala tried one more time to assert authority. "Even if you succeed in this terrorist campaign, you cannot rule the galaxy. You lack the numbers, the infrastructure, the legitimacy." Webb's expression grew serious. "Your Excellency, we don't want to rule the galaxy. We never did. All we wanted was to live in peace, to raise our families, to explore the stars, and to contribute to something larger than ourselves. You could have had humanity as willing partners in building a better galaxy." He paused, looking directly at each Council member in turn. "Instead, you chose to try to exterminate us. You made that choice knowing that we had children, families, entire societies that had done nothing wrong except exist in a galaxy that you claimed belonged to you. So now you get to live with the consequences of that choice." The display showed human fleets surrounding the core worlds, the ancient heart of Council power. Massive installations that had stood for millennia were being systematically destroyed or captured. "Here's what happens next," Webb said. "Within 72 hours, every major Council military installation will be neutralized. Your fleets will be scattered or destroyed. Your government infrastructure will be in ruins. Then we're going to do something that apparently none of you expected." He leaned forward, his eyes reflecting a determination that had been forged in the fires of survival. "We're going to leave. We're going to take our people and our technology and go find a part of the galaxy where we can build something better. Something that doesn't require the extermination of species that don't fit your vision of galactic order." The room erupted in confused voices. The idea that the humans would destroy the council and then simply leave was apparently too alien for the assembled delegates to comprehend. Webb waited for quiet, then continued. "But before we go, we're going to make sure this never happens again. We're going to leave every species in this galaxy with the technology and knowledge they need to defend themselves against the next galactic empire that decides some people don't deserve to exist." General Krathmer stood slowly, his massive frame radiating disbelief. "You would arm our enemies, give our technology to primitive species. We're going to give everyone the same chance at freedom that you tried to take from us. Every species that wants it will receive the tools to defend themselves. The age of galactic empires is over." The Chancellor's voice cracked with desperation. "You don't understand the chaos you're unleashing. Without the Council's authority, the galaxy will descend into endless wars." Webb's expression softened slightly. "Maybe, or maybe all these species that you've been keeping under your thumb will surprise you. Maybe they'll build something better than what you gave them. Maybe they'll create a galaxy based on cooperation instead of domination." He stood and straightened his uniform. "Either way, it will be their choice to make. That's what freedom means, something your council never understood." The communication ended, leaving the assembled council members staring at empty air. Around them, reports continued to pour in of human victories across the galaxy. The greatest galactic power in known history was collapsing in real time, brought down by a species they had dismissed as primitive animals. Chancellor Vexthala sank into its chair, all four arms hanging limply at its sides. In trying to crush humanity, the Council had awakened something that would ultimately destroy everything they had built. The irony was almost too perfect to bear. The galaxy was about to change forever, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of the UES Prometheus, watching as the last of the Council's reserve fleets burned in the void around Galactic Prime, the ancient capital world of the Council. Behind her, the planet's surface glowed with the fires of a civilization in collapse. "Status report," she called to her tactical officer. "The Nexari home fleet has been neutralized, Captain. The Zephyrian Empress's personal guard surrendered after we demonstrated the power of the Nova torpedoes. The Altarian defense grid went offline 30 minutes ago." Elena nodded grimly. The Nova torpedoes were humanity's newest surprise, weapons that could trigger controlled stellar collapse in any star system. The demonstration they had given the Zephyrian fleet involved using one on an uninhabited star 40 light-years away. The resulting explosion had been visible across half the galaxy. "What about the civilian population?" "All evacuation centers are operating normally, ma'am. No targeting of non-combatants. Medical supplies and food are being distributed as planned." This was perhaps the most alien thing about humanity's war against the Council. Even as they systematically dismantled galactic civilization, they were going out of their way to protect innocent civilians. Every human attack was surgically precise, targeting only military installations and government infrastructure while providing aid to displaced populations. Admiral Sarah Chen stepped onto the observation deck, her expression grim. Elena recognized her from the historical records, the former ambassador who had delivered the Council's ultimatum to Earth 3 weeks ago. Now she wore the uniform of the United Earth Space Navy, and her diplomatic smile had been replaced by the hard expression of a military commander. "Admiral," Elena said, saluting. "Captain, I wanted to personally thank you for the precision of your attacks on the administrative centers. The intelligence we've gathered from the captured databases is proving invaluable." Elena looked back at the planet below. "Any word from the other strike forces?" "Commander Park's fleet has secured the Corvan homeworld. The entire Hierarchy Council surrendered when they realized we could bypass their planetary shields. General Morrison reports that the Taurian Empire has agreed to our terms rather than face orbital bombardment." Chen pulled up a holographic display showing the status of human operations across the galaxy. Green indicators marked successful operations. Red showed ongoing conflicts. Yellow indicated negotiations in progress. The map was almost entirely green. The speed of the collapse has exceeded even our most optimistic projections, Chen continued. The Council's authority was more fragile than we realized. Once member species saw that the mighty galactic government could be defeated, many of them started settling old scores with their neighbors. Elena frowned. That's what we were trying to avoid. The whole point was to prevent galactic chaos. Don't worry, Phase 2 is already beginning. Our diplomatic teams are making contact with every species that wants to establish new relationships. The preliminary reports are encouraging. The display changed to show human ships arriving at dozens of worlds throughout the galaxy. But these weren't warships. They were massive construction vessels, medical ships, and transports carrying relief supplies. The Kelari Federation has already asked for help rebuilding their orbital infrastructure, Chen said. The Vorthan Republic wants to establish trade relationships. Even some of the former Council member species are reaching out. Elena was amazed. They trust us after what we just did to their government. They're not stupid, Captain. They can see the difference between what we did to the Council's military and how we're treating everyone else. We've gone out of our way to show that our quarrel was with the government, not the people. A communication alert chimed, and the hologram of Admiral Webb appeared in the center of the deck. His expression was tired but satisfied. Admiral Chen, Captain Rodriguez, I wanted to update you on Operation Phoenix. The technology transfer program is ahead of schedule. We've already provided defensive weapons to 47 species that requested them. Chen leaned forward. Any resistance from former Council loyalists? Some, the Corvan military is having trouble accepting that their empire is over. But most of the resistance is coming from species that benefited from the old system. The ones that made their living by oppressing others for the Council. Elena studied the tactical display. Sir, are we sure about this strategy? Arming everyone seems like it could backfire badly. Webb's expression grew serious. Captain, for 10,000 years, the galaxy has been controlled by whoever had the biggest fleet and the most advanced weapons. We're changing that equation permanently. When everyone has access to the same level of defensive technology, conquest becomes much more difficult. The Admiral pulled up new displays showing the weapons systems humanity was distributing. They were impressive but carefully limited. Planetary defense grids that could stop invasion fleets. Point defense systems that could protect civilian shipping. Communication networks that couldn't be easily disrupted by attackers. We're not giving them offensive weapons, Webb explained. These are tools for protection, not conquest. Any species that wants to build an empire will find it almost impossible to hold territory when everyone can defend themselves effectively. Chen nodded approvingly. Deterrence through widespread defensive capability, it's elegant. It's also something the galaxy has never tried before, Webb admitted. The Council maintained order through overwhelming force. We're betting that most species will choose cooperation over conflict when conquest is no longer a viable option. Elena looked at the data streaming across the displays. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy as human teams worked to stabilize the chaos left by the Council's collapse. Refugee camps were being established. Trade routes were being secured. Diplomatic contacts were being made. What about the Council leadership? She asked. Webb's expression darkened slightly. High Chancellor Vexthala and the Inner Circle have been taken into custody. They'll face trial for attempted genocide, but that's a matter for the new galactic community to decide. We won't be their judges. And the other Council members? Most have accepted exile to neutral worlds. Some have even asked to help with the reconstruction efforts. It seems that not all of them agreed with the decision to exterminate humanity. Chen pulled up another display showing human ships preparing to leave various systems. Sir, are we really planning to honor our promise to leave? Webb smiled for the first time since the conversation began. Admiral, we meant every word we said. Humanity never wanted to rule the galaxy. We just wanted the chance to be part of it. Now that we've created the conditions for that to be possible, we're going to step back and let everyone figure out how to build something better. Elena found herself both impressed and slightly worried by the audacity of the plan. What if it doesn't work? What if the galaxy descends into chaos anyway? Then at least every species will have the tools to defend themselves while they figure it out. And if they really need our help, they know where to find us. The Admiral's image began to flicker as the communication ended. Both of you have done outstanding work. Get your crews some rest. Tomorrow we begin the final phase. As Webb's hologram disappeared, Alina looked at Admiral Chen. The final phase. We go home, Chen said simply. Back to our colonies, back to Earth, back to the life we were trying to build before all this started. The galaxy will have to learn to get along without us. Alina looked out at the stars, thinking about the magnitude of what humanity had accomplished. In 3 weeks, they had destroyed the greatest galactic power in history, prevented a genocide, and laid the foundation for an entirely new kind of galactic civilization. Do you think we'll ever see them again? She asked. The species we're leaving behind. Chen smiled. I hope so, but next time it will be as friends coming to visit, not as refugees begging for acceptance. Below them, Galactic Prime continued its transformation from the seat of galactic empire to just another world trying to figure out its place in a galaxy that had suddenly become much more complicated and much more free. The greatest military victory in human history was almost complete. Soon, it would be time to find out if their greatest gamble would pay off. 5 years after the fall of the Galactic Council, Ambassador Sarah Chen walked through the corridors of Harmony Station, the new diplomatic hub that had been built in neutral space by a coalition of formerly oppressed species. The station buzzed with activity as delegates from hundreds of worlds worked together to solve problems that would have been impossible under the old regime. She paused at a large observation window to watch ships from dozens of different species docking at the station's many bays. Sleek Kelari vessels nestled next to angular Vorthan transports. Crystalline Altarian ships sparkled in the light of the system's twin stars. Even a few ships from former council species were present, their crews working alongside the very species they had once oppressed. Quite a sight, isn't it? Sarah turned to see Ambassador Thayara of the Kelari Federation approaching. The graceful, deer-like alien had become one of Sarah's closest friends during the establishment of the new galactic community. It's beautiful, Sarah admitted. Sometimes I can hardly believe it's real. When my government first received your technology transfers, many of us thought it was too good to be true. Weapons powerful enough to stop any invasion fleet, given freely to anyone who wanted them. Some of our military advisors thought it was a trap. Sarah smiled, and now we understand what your Admiral Webb meant when he said that security through mutual defense was stronger than security through domination. The Corvan Empire tried to invade the Delaney Republic last year. 300 ships against one world. They were stopped by a planetary defense grid that cost less than a single council battleship. They walked together toward the Central Assembly Hall, where representatives from across the galaxy were gathering for the daily coordination meeting. Sarah marveled at how different these sessions were from the old council meetings. Instead of a hierarchical chamber designed to intimidate, this was a circular room where every delegate had an equal voice. How are the reconstruction efforts progressing? Sarah asked. Better than anyone dared hope. The Nexari Collective has finished rebuilding their orbital habitats. The Zephyrian worlds have established their new democratic councils. Even some of the former council core worlds are thriving under their new governments. Sarah nodded, pleased but not entirely surprised. Humanity's post-war intelligence operations had suggested that many species had only supported the council out of fear, not loyalty. Given the chance to govern themselves, most had chosen remarkably progressive paths. And the Corvan hierarchy? Thayara's expression grew thoughtful. That's been more complicated. Many of their military leaders still believe in the old ways, but the younger generation is embracing the changes. General Vexter's daughter is actually serving as an ambassador to the Delaney Republic now. They entered the assembly hall, and Sarah was struck once again by the diversity of beings working together. Species that had been enemies for millennia were collaborating on everything from trade agreements to scientific research. The transformation was remarkable. The session began with reports from various working groups. The Economic Cooperation Committee announced new trade routes that were bringing prosperity to previously isolated worlds. The Scientific Exchange Program reported breakthrough discoveries made possible by combining the knowledge of dozens of different species. The Peacekeeping Force, made up of volunteers from 30 different worlds, had successfully mediated 3 potential conflicts in the past month. We have a special announcement today, said Council Speaker Mordex, a former Taurian general who had become one of the most effective leaders of the new galactic community. The Humanity Diplomatic Corps has requested permission to address the Assembly. Sarah felt a flutter of excitement. It had been 2 years since official human representatives had visited the galactic community. True to their word, humanity had withdrawn to their own space after the war, leaving the galaxy to rebuild itself. Admiral Marcus Webb entered the chamber, flanked by a small diplomatic team. He looked older than Sarah remembered, but his bearing was still strong and confident. The assembly fell silent as he approached the central speaking platform. "Honored delegates," Webb began, "I bring greetings from the United Earth Council and all of humanity. We have watched your progress with great interest and considerable pride." The chamber erupted in applause. Sarah was moved to see genuine affection and respect in the faces around her. These beings had not forgotten who had given them their freedom. Webb raised his hand for silence. 5 years ago, humanity made a promise. We said that we would break the systems of oppression that controlled this galaxy and then step back to allow you to build something better. Today, I'm here to tell you that you have exceeded our wildest expectations. He activated a holographic display showing statistical data from across the galaxy. Interspecies conflicts are at their lowest level in recorded history. Trade between previously isolated regions has increased by 400%. Scientific advancement has accelerated dramatically. Most importantly, no species has attempted to establish a galactic empire. The display changed to show images from across the galaxy. Former council strongholds had been transformed into centers of learning and cooperation. Worlds that had been strip-mined for resources were being restored to their natural beauty. Species that had been forced into slavery were building their own civilizations. "You have proven something that many thought impossible," Webb continued. "That intelligent beings can cooperate without coercion, that diversity strengthens rather than weakens civilization, and that freedom is not chaos but the foundation of true order." Ambassador Veltash of the Andromedans raised one of its tentacles. "Admiral, your own species has been absent from many of these achievements. Don't you want to be part of what we're building here?" Webb smiled. "Ambassador, we never left. Human scientists have been collaborating in your research programs. Human traders have been participating in your economic networks. Human artists have been sharing in your cultural exchanges. We've been here all along, just not as rulers or conquerors." The truth was that humanity had indeed been deeply involved in the galaxy's reconstruction, but always as partners and equals rather than leaders. It was a subtle but important distinction that had allowed other species to develop confidence in their own abilities. "But there is one more reason for my visit today," Webb said, his expression growing more serious. "We've detected signs that may indicate the presence of an external threat." The chamber fell silent. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Our deep space monitoring stations have identified anomalous signals from beyond the galactic rim. Energy signatures that don't match any known technology. We believe we may be dealing with visitors from outside our galaxy." The implications hung heavy in the air. The galaxy had just learned to live in peace. Now they might face a threat from outside their known universe. Speaker Mordex leaned forward. "What do you propose, Admiral?" "Nothing for now. The signals are still distant, possibly years away from reaching our space. But we wanted you to know that if this threat materializes, humanity will honor the same principles we've followed since the war ended. We'll share our technology freely with anyone who wants it. We'll stand with you as equals, not as your protectors or your leaders." Ambassador Thayara stood. "And if the threat proves too great for any of us to handle alone?" Webb's smile returned, and Sarah recognized the same confidence that had carried humanity through its darkest hour. "Then we'll face it together, as one galaxy united in freedom rather than divided by fear. That's what you've built here, and it's stronger than any empire that ever existed." The assembly erupted in cheers. Sarah felt tears in her eyes as she watched beings from hundreds of worlds showing their determination to stand together against whatever might come. As the formal session ended, and delegates began clustering in smaller groups to discuss the implications of Webb's announcement, Sarah made her way over to the Admiral. "It's really happening, isn't it?" she said. "Everything we hoped for when we made that first threat to the Council." Webb nodded. "Better than we hoped, actually. We thought we were just buying humanity's survival. Instead, we accidentally created the foundation for a truly free galactic civilization. Sarah looked around the chamber at the animated discussions taking place between species that had been mortal enemies just 5 years before. Do you think they'll be ready for whatever's coming? I think they'll be ready for anything, Webb replied. Freedom makes people stronger, not weaker. The Council forgot that lesson and it cost them everything. I don't think these beings will make the same mistake. As Sarah watched delegates from across the galaxy planning their common defense, she realized that humanity's greatest victory had not been destroying the Galactic Council. It had been proving that a different kind of galaxy was possible, one where strength came from cooperation rather than domination. The Council had tried to crush humanity and had instead brought about their own destruction. But in the ashes of that empire, something far better had grown. The galaxy had learned that freedom was not a luxury for the strong but a necessity for everyone. And when the next great test came, they would face it not as subjects of an empire, but as free beings united in their diversity and their determination to protect what they had built together. The age of galactic empires was truly over. The age of galactic democracy had begun.